please watch until the end of the video for a special announcement. Legends Arceus is easily one of the greatest main series entries of the Pokemon game series, with many aspects of gameplay, story twists, and options in exploration that acted as a necessary solution to many issues the franchise's formula was having, to an extent that I can almost forgive how much of a rushed cash grab the Sinnoh remakes were when Game Freak put their efforts into polishing this game. Almost. Despite that though, even this game with such focus on the Pokemon God is not without its sins, in it having a few issues that are mainly a give and take case that hold it back from being the perfect, quintessential Pokemon game, even if it is pretty close. Here are the top 10. To start off, one many will view as enough of annoyance to make it obligatory is the satchel limit. It's not too much of a major hindrance, as those mindful of it will often not lose anything of value when exploring, if you don't mind going back and forth from the camps, or will be willing to throw away or use a few items that aren't too rare. What is a bit unnecessary though is how gaining more space requires paying bagging to open up an extra slot. I can understand how a bag shouldn't be some pocket dimension capable of carrying an infinite amount of items like in other Pokemon games. What I don't understand is how the bridge between them is a random NPC making more money off you than a Kanto bike shop owner. This is one of the more minor inconveniences, but there is some annoyance to be found in how learning new moves goes. Rather than asking you if you want to learn a new move upon level up, you have to manually do so from the party menu after battle. This isn't a major issue with the ease of access and relearning moves to balance things out, but it does seem an unnecessary inconvenience, especially when compared to how Scarlet and Violet would perfect what Arceus established in such ease of access. The new life breathed into several Pokémon through regional variants and evolutions was a great addition to the game, apart from one family. Even though it's nice to see another poison fighting family with Hisuian Sneasel and Sneasler, their family only raises questions. If these were the native Sneasel of Hisui, how did Jotonian Sneasel and Weavile become the sole Sneasel family of modern Sinnoh? If it was poaching, why did one family survive and the other didn't? If one was outbred in a manner similar to red squirrels in England, why didn't the Hisuian Sneasel breed with Jotonian ones? There's a lot of questions to be asked and no answers for what seems unnecessary, when all regional variants thus far didn't have the precedent of the same Pokemon family of a different variant being known to reside there at a different time. Hisuian Sneasel and Sneasler aren't bad Pokemon on their own, though would be more suited for a region other than Sinnoh's past self. From one thing that's highly unnecessary to another, we have the evolution methods for the new Pokemon available. Putting in some new mechanics to help explain why old Pokemon couldn't evolve in prior games makes sense, and has been around since Gold and Silver. The problem is that Legends Arceus takes this step and then makes you do several more for no reason. Compared to how Scarlet and Violet would implement new evolutions for Girafarig and Primeape, you can see how unnecessary the steps of Hisui's evolutions are, when Stantler could just use Psyshield Bash 20 times, rather than necessitating it to be an agile style, or Ursaring not only needing a peat block to evolve, but for it to be on a full moon. The thing that makes this a major issue is how the game's unique mechanics make it so that implementing the same methods into later games would be difficult without changing them drastically. On the subject of drastic changes, Pokemon no longer being able to hold items is a step back for no reason. It's not a big deal when the only items they'd benefit from holding in the game would be berries, but like with the convoluted evolution methods, it just brings up the simple question of why. This is especially questionable when wild Pokemon will still drop items on occasion, so what's preventing caught Pokemon from holding items? Sticking on the topic of removed mechanics that just raise more questions than answers, Pokemon not being able to breed is a pretty bad choice. I can understand not having Ditto in the game with the implications of it being a man-made Pokemon, but the idea no eggs at all would pop up when keeping all your Pokemon together in fields seems like a stretch. From a gameplay perspective, it also makes acquiring some Pokemon unnecessarily difficult due to the reliance on space-time distortions when Magnemite and Magneton are otherwise unobtainable. The game's introduction of a new legendary with Enamorus and the mission involving the forces of nature are quite different from the other legendary missions in the game, and not in a good way. There's quite a difficulty spike with Thundurus and Tornadus due to not only their speed and the wide hitbox of their attacks, but also having to keep in mind the numerous wild Pokemon that will be close to their spawn sites. Enamorus brings this to a new level with not only this being increased in difficulty, but the bog it's found in serving as an additional obstacle. The one thing that prevents this over-the-top difficulty spike being higher is it luckily having an exploit in wind balls serving as high-range enough projectiles to hit these legendaries for the 3 necessary stuns without triggering their run away. Amongst the aspects of Legends Arceus that show a one step forward, 2 steps back mentality, the removal of abilities is the most obvious. Abilities were one of the great steps forward for the franchise's complexity since Gen 3, with them sometimes allowing Pokemon that would otherwise be forced in irrelevancy to thrive. The issues in going back on this are presented in Legends Arceus when considering things such as how defensively pathetic something such as Golem is without Sturdy. Compared to other similar cases of breaking what had long since been fixed though, this is a lesser offense when the removal of abilities at least makes Levitate Pokemon not something needed to counter anymore, but the cons certainly outweigh the pros here. Sticking on the subject of breaking the fixed, there's the changes to movesets having similar problems to certain movesets in the first generation, along with the problems with how Gens 2 and 3 handled the physical special split. The limiting of what moves were brought back to the game lead to several Pokemon not having moves that complement their natural attacking inclination. For instance, no hard-hitting physical ice-type moves for Weavile, or all the physical ground types, such as Garchomp, Rhyperior, or, again, Golem, suffering from Earthquake's removal, and most of them having to rely on Dig or high horsepower instead. In Garchomp's case, in particular, it's brought down a step further by its best physical ground move being Bulldoze. Sure, Garchomp is scary enough of a fast and strong sweeper that I can understand the nerf, but not at the expense of all other ground types, and especially not in a single player game. To bring these cases of return to past problems long since fixed to a conclusion, what is probably the biggest issue with Legends Arceus is how crucial speed is to the game. In prior games, a slow speed stat wasn't the end of the world when Trick Room existed, and priority moves could help a lot. Here though, you can't even make the decision of what to do on the turn before being attacked if outsped by an opponent, which removes several of the mechanics that provide depth to the Pokemon battles, as here the key to victory is just be fast and strong enough to sweep. This over-reliance on speed also makes a lot of status moves far less useful if the chances of being knocked out before you can set up are increased several times over. Despite all these criticisms, the fact that this was easier to organise than the top 10 best mechanics is a testament to how excellent of a game this is. I may do a video on the game's best mechanics if there's enough demand, however. Also, if there's enough interest, let's say over 1000 views and 100 likes, I will do a Sinnoh-themed legendary giveaway once Scarlet and Violet become compatible with Home.